My name is Clara Mendez. I was 25 when I first arrived at the convent of St. Liliana. That place wasn't a church. It wasn't a monastery. It was something else. I'd just gotten out of rehab, again. My aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years, pulled some strings to get me a spot at this spiritual retreat nestled deep in the forests of northern Oregon. A quiet convent. No internet. No phones. Just God and healing, she said. I wasn't religious, but I figured isolation might help. What I didn't know was that I wasn't the one who needed saving. The convent sat like a forgotten ruin. Ivy strangled the stone walls. Moss grew thick between the cobbled paths. It was always damp there, even when it wasn't raining. The kind of damp that got into your lungs and never left. There were 7 nuns and a priest. They didn't smile when they greeted me, just bowed their heads in silence, as if joy was a sin. Sister Ruth, the Mother Superior, handed me a gray robe and a small wooden cross. No mirrors, she said plainly. Not in this house. I thought it was just some monastic rule, but now I know better. I first noticed her on my 3rd night. We weren't allowed to talk after sunset. The convent had strict hours, prayers at 5, meals at 6, silence by 8. But that night, as I lay awake on the straw mattress in my cold little room, I heard a girl whispering. At first, I thought it was just wind, but then I heard it clearly, words in a language I didn't understand. It was coming from the room next to mine. The one they said was off limits. I crept to the wall and pressed my ear against it. Soft sobs, muffled prayers, and then a deep voice, not a man's, not a woman's, grinding through the air like wet stone. I should have told someone, but I didn't, because something about that voice made me curious. The next day, I asked Sister Ruth about the locked room. "There is no one there," she said sharply, not even looking up from her prayers. But that night, I saw her, the girl. She was outside in the garden, barefoot, her robe soaked from the morning dew. I thought she was praying, but when I got closer, I realized she was scratching something into the dirt with her fingers. Circles, strange symbols, over and over. I asked her name. She didn't look up, just whispered, "He's watching through the trees." I froze. "What?" She turned to me then, her face pale and sunken like she hadn't eaten in weeks. Her lips cracked, eyes wide, but her mouth didn't move when I heard the next words. "He wants to come in." And then she passed out. They didn't call it that, of course. They said Anna, if that was her name, was suffering from spiritual confusion. They kept her tied to a bed in the cellar. No light, no windows. I only saw her once after that, when I brought food down and the priest forgot to lock the door behind him. She was smiling when I stepped in, not at me, at something behind me. There was no one there, but the candle in my hand went out all the same. She began speaking in tongues, then stopped and said something in perfect Spanish, a language no one else in the convent spoke. "You brought it with you," she said. "You opened the door." I dropped the tray and ran. That was the first night the crucifixes turned upside down on the walls. By the next morning, Anna was gone. Sister Ruth claimed she'd been moved to another facility, but nobody saw her leave. No car, no noise, nothing but a dark stain left on the cellar floor and claw marks along the wooden post she'd been tied to. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that the whole thing was a withdrawal hallucination, but I kept hearing it, scratching, not in the walls, not in the ceiling, inside me, like something was trying to get out. I started sleepwalking. I'd wake up barefoot in the chapel, covered in mud. Candles burned down around me in a circle I didn't remember lighting. Once, I woke up holding a dead bird. Its wings had been removed, carefully, almost ritualistically. I stopped sleeping after that, but that only made things worse. One night, I snuck into the cellar. I had to know what they were hiding, what they had done to Anna, whether she was real at all or some reflection of my own fractured mind. What I found wasn't her. It was a book, old, bound in cracked leather, pages bloated with moisture and ink that bled like veins. It was written in Latin, Greek, and something else. Something wrong. The characters weren't even human. Buried in the center was a loose photograph, a girl tied to a chair, her mouth sewn shut, eyes wide open. Below it, handwritten in shaky letters, If you speak his name, he hears you. If you believe, he answers. If you doubt, he comes. I dropped the book and ran, but the next day, the words showed up scratched into my mirror. We weren't allowed mirrors, and I didn't put one there. It started with the bell. The convent bell rang every morning at 5 a.m. sharp. But one night, at 2:14 a.m. exactly, it rang 13 times. Sister Ruth said it was a malfunction, but I saw her hands shaking as she said it. That night, I dreamed of Anna. She was floating above her bed, wrists limp, blood dripping upward from her eyes like tears in reverse. Her mouth opened, and out came not a voice, but a sound, a horrible sound. It was like the gurgling of drowned lungs mixed with children crying and pigs screaming and something like static. I woke up screaming, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from the chapel. There's something deeply wrong about a locked chapel door that opens when you beg it not to. The sound grew louder as I approached. Like a hurricane trapped inside an organ pipe, the altar was upside down. The crucifix was split in two, hanging from its nails like someone crucified the idea of salvation itself. In the center of the altar was Sister Ruth, on her knees, hands bloodied, chanting something over and over. "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. He won't go back, he won't go back." I backed away slowly and stepped on something soft. It was a tongue, not hers. I ran. I tried to leave. I packed my few belongings, left the robe behind, and made it to the front gate. But it was locked. Not just physically, but spiritually. That sounds insane, I know. But I felt it, like a weight on my chest, pushing me backwards. Like something was warning me, telling me, you don't leave until he's done with you. So I did the only thing I hadn't tried. I confessed to the priest, told him everything. The dreams, the symbols, the voice in the cellar, the book. He stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "He chose you." I asked him who. He didn't answer. He just handed me a knife. She came back on the 13th night. I woke to see her standing at the foot of my bed. But it wasn't her. Her eyes were too wide. Her joints moved like broken dolls, limbs lagging half a second behind her intention. Her smile was human, but her mouth was full of teeth. Too many. Not just along the gums, but on the inside of her cheeks, the roof of her mouth, her tongue. She opened it slowly and said in my voice, "He doesn't live in hell, he lives in the silence." I couldn't move, couldn't scream, and then she turned and walked out of the room, backwards. For the next few days, no one spoke, not even during meals. Sister Ruth sat at the head of the long wooden table, eyes locked on the window. The others kept their heads down, lips moving in silent prayer that never ended. Something had shifted in the air. Time no longer passed like it used to. It felt stuck, like we were in a loop that kept resetting every time I blinked. I saw Anna everywhere now. Sometimes crouched in corners, sometimes upside down on the ceiling. Once, she sat on my bed and whispered to me for 7 minutes straight, but I heard nothing, only silence, and that silence was deafening. It filled my ears, wrapped around my heart, and pressed against the inside of my skull until I felt like I was drowning in it. They didn't ask for my permission. They said it wasn't about me anymore. "We have to contain it," Sister Ruth whispered as they led me to the chapel, "before it becomes flesh." They tied me down, ankles, wrists, forehead. I screamed, begged, cursed. No one listened, not even God. The priest stood above me, eyes sunken and wet with grief. "I'm sorry," he said. "It has to be her." He raised the book, the one from the cellar, and began chanting words that broke the world around me. Walls cracked, candles flickered blue. The air itself rippled like water. And then I felt it, something inside me trying to get out, clawing, scratching, stretching my skin from the inside like a child pressing its face against plastic wrap. I don't remember passing out, but when I woke, I wasn't on the floor. I was in it, inside the silence. A vast black expanse with no floor, no ceiling, just echoes of memories I hadn't lived and voices I didn't recognize. In front of me stood Anna, but she wasn't Anna. Her face flickered like a bad transmission, a dozen faces overlaid on top of each other, some human, some not. She smiled with her too many teeth and stepped closer. "You brought me through," she said. "All I needed was belief." I shook my head. "No, I never believed in any of this." She laughed. You were terrified. That was enough. And then she reached out and touched my chest. I woke to fire. Real fire. The chapel was burning. Walls collapsing. Ash filling the air like snow. The nuns were screaming, some chanting, others clawing at their own faces like they were trying to tear something out. I don't know who started it. Maybe Sister Ruth, maybe me, maybe him. I crawled through the chaos, choking, my robe half melted to my back. I stepped over the priest's body, his mouth sewn shut with rosary beads, and forced the front doors open. They hadn't been locked, not anymore. He was done with us. It's been 7 years. I live alone now. No mirrors, no phones, just silence. People think I'm mentally ill. I've been institutionalized twice, diagnosed with PTSD, psychotic depression, even schizophrenia. But I'm not sick. I'm haunted. Every night at 2:14 a.m., the same dream plays. Anna, if that's still her name, sits at the foot of my bed, mouth full of teeth, whispering things I can't hear. And every morning, the same words are scratched into my window from the inside. He's not done with you. And worse, sometimes I believe them.